Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, joined by Jordan Lytle. Jordan Lytle is a man who is doing it all. He is in the land business with oil and gas. He's the senior land project manager at Western Land Services. He's been dealing with oil and gas for over 17 years. He's also the enterprise architect for a sales and marketing company, Modern Health IT. Sorry, that's actually a digital telehealth firm that transformed from a sales and marketing company. And then he is the owner and CEO of Tafford Exploration. Jordan, how do you do it all?
To be honest, I think I've had to since I was young. So I grew up not in the greatest area in one of the cities. I think it was ranked 9th in the nation in gangs per capita and violence in Lawton, Oklahoma, which is not something that you would have ever thought of or even heard of. But somehow they ranked high almost every year throughout the late 80s, early 90s through that era. So I know that's kind of dating me, but that's all right. There's a lot of experience that came out of that. Throughout that, I worked 3 jobs in high school, starting with I was able to work whenever I was, even before that, from 8 years old, 9 years old, pushing a shop broom in a sign shop, then working with computers on helping them design their sign information and kind of getting an early education in tech and some of the design software back in the 90s, and putting my own computer together, to scraping money to get a telephone line for my own self as my mom worked her job. We were 3 kids, poor neighborhood, and she worked as a medical records tech. And so blessed to her, I don't know how she did it all, is the testament that I'm getting at. I watched her juggle everything in order to get to where I'm at today. And she took a job as a secretary in Oklahoma City, which is kind of the larger city in Oklahoma, where we moved from Lawton close to my sophomore year of high school. And she took a job at a smaller university called Southern Nazarene University. It's actually where I got my degree, but it was because I got free tuition because she worked there. My older brother, my older sister were able to get their college educations, masters, and then she eventually finished her education as well and moved into the adult studies and took over that program. So really the testament is I watched her do everything. And so that's one of the biggest success stories I've ever seen. She never made a ton of money. I watched her give all of her money to some of the foreign athletes to get them over here to get work visas, things like that, after their soccer careers or after that, which is huge and humbling in order to watch somebody that I just had a great example of. And in order to support her, we stayed busy as well. And in order to be able to go out with friends, we were able to keep working. So I did that through a triple major in college. In college, I'd start my day at about 6 a.m, work in the library till about 8:30, 9, with the work studies program, go to class. Then I would go from class to, I had a full ride for academics and soccer. And so then from soccer on, I moved to waiting tables after soccer practice till, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night at Chili's. And then somehow I'd get up and do it again, and I'd have a free day on Sunday. And then all the way through to my outside of that, after graduating, I continued the same success and same work ethic that I had throughout college and throughout previous. I got my break I wanted to go into law school. Did really well on my LSAT, had some issues with with an administration for one of the universities where I scored well. I put all my administration, put all my eggs into one basket. So I'd highly recommend not doing that. And that scholarship didn't fall out the way I thought it would, but it was kind of that fork in the road. So I took a position with a company called United Land Company, which is they're a smaller oil and gas land brokerage, kind of in the mergers and acquisition space. And I really learned from a lawyer who is one of the grandfathers of oil and gas law. So I got to learn how to work with mergers and acquisitions through the contracts, and that kind of basis. So from there, it was interesting because I thought I was going to go into law school. I kind of kept going, kind of kept twirling my feet, but I also was bartending at night while I was working a 40-hour day at United Land Company and learning. So I was kind of seeing two different aspects, and I was still trying to play professional soccer at the time. So it was I kind of kept that same moxie and kept moving through that. And I ended up, and I was like, well, law may not be where I need to go. So I ended up getting and this was about 2009. And if you remember, a lot of people remember the housing market kind of crashed. Oil and gas started tanking, very similar to what happened kind of recently in the 2020 in the Midwestern region. And so I luckily, one of the clients that I was working for in the oil and gas company said, "Hey, we have a spot open. You basically put everything together for this acquisition that we did, which was a multi-million-dollar acquisition. Why don't you come over and you can follow that on and continue that on here?" So I worked with a company called Williams Exploration, and I moved from Oklahoma City to Tulsa and kept moving from there. And soccer in Tulsa, I ended up playing a little bit of professional on the side and coaching, continued to bartend along with working at Williams Exploration, which was they're one of the larger firms in Oklahoma City, or I'm sorry, in Tulsa. And from there, I got to see what business was like, and they decided, or they had a program where I could work and I could go to school at night. So I ended up getting my MBA with an emphasis in finance from there and moving forward. And so that really helped kind of that mergers and acquisitions background that I still had, where I was what they call a landman, not quite like the show that's on TV that it gets close, but I think more of the landman in that show is the lawyer that's running title in the background than actually Billy Bob Thornton, which I enjoy the show and it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't quite fall in the realms, but I don't think it's supposed to. So from Williams, I ended up moving out of that and starting a small brokerage and working for some of the clients or some of the competitors of Williams, and some of the unknowns, and started really helping with some of the individuals and the farmers and the landowners in Kansas, northern Oklahoma, which is kind of in western north Oklahoma, where it's kind of bare and not near as industrious. In fact, there was a running joke in the Kansas portion. I was talking to my brother and he was like, "Well, what is that like?" And he said, I said, "I didn't realize that if I had a dog, I could watch it run away for 4 days." And because that's how flat it is out in West Kansas, and until you kind of get hit the Colorado area, which we know what that terrain looks like. It's beautiful out there. So it's interesting. But from continuing through those eras, I continued to gain clients, continued to work in the oil and gas sector, and in the mergers and acquisitions, moving from one client to the next, hitting almost 48 out of the 48 mainland states out of 50 through different ventures, different travel ventures, going through and pulling companies apart from inside out and working on processes for those companies. And I did that for about 15 years until about 2020. The pandemic and oil and gas kind of went downhill. I think we hit negative $38 a barrel, and there's some economics behind there. You can't tangibly hit a negative number on a barrel of oil, but apparently you can. And so from there, I I had a friend who was starting a company called Blick, and it meant 100 look in German. Centi being 100, and Blick, Blick, meaning look in German. And Blick also happened to be his last name. And he was a former global sales leader for Danaher, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, actually. And he had a good cast of expertise. One of his sales reps was interesting enough. He wanted to bring me on in order to train me up in the healthcare market. So I remember spending 120 hours a week trying to figure out what is the healthcare market, moving from oil and gas mergers and acquisitions, and trying to correlate what a patient is to an individual landowner for oil and gas. And they, fortunately, a lot of the same similarities in helping individuals as it is to help patients. And so I had a passion to be able to help those. And the biggest need for Blick was they were a digital marketing company slash moving into the healthcare space, where they had patents that, because of David's father being who he was, a pathologist that started one of the very first EHR companies in the United States. And so those patents allowed him to break into a market that was pretty siloed in that regard, to where a few of the laws that were passed in 2008, which was meaningful use, where it said all hospitals needed to digitize records, and that it was a great portion for hospitals, meaning that they no longer could submit for claims and insurance by handwritten notes or anything. They actually had to type them out instead of dictation. So it kind of moved hospitals into the next phase of the digital phase. And for about 8-10 years, there were about 5 large companies. Epic, I believe, was one of them. Cerner, a couple, and there are a couple others. Athena Health. And they really used patient medical records as a way to retain patients within locations by making smaller doctors pay large amounts of money in order to retain their records. And so they kept them basically prisoner to those silos. It's not so much necessarily the same anymore because of the 2020 CARES Act. Kind of didn't reverse the Meaningful Use Act, but what it did was it added a new concept to it, meaning that those siloed companies needed to release the records to the individuals. And that passed in 2016, but took effect fully in 2020. And so right at 2020, David was taking his technology platform, his digital marketing, his expertise from Danaher to a new level. And that new level was creating a telehealth company that allowed you to see your medical records and to be able to share your medical records with any one of those siloed information. So his company is on the verge. He's named in Forbes a few times as one of the most up and coming healthcare companies that will be changing the face of healthcare. So luckily I got in with him, and there were about 6 other people that were there in the company. And the biggest need for his was being able to correlate the business sense, the mergers, integrating those into a healthcare system or into a small doctor's office. If you can, there's many different pathways, and then integrating those into what a tech or what our developers needed in order to create the solutions between the three. So it created a position. I went from a solutions architect. I took the Amazon Web Services solutions architect training, and then moved into more of an enterprise architect role. Director of Enterprise Architect at Blick was the name of it, and it's since recently changed into modernhealthit.com, which is they're an up and coming. They've got quite a few providers or doctors on their platform, and they're really revolutionizing the smaller firms and allowing them to compete with the very large healthcare facilities. And so that was it's a game changer when it comes to, if you're a smaller firm, it takes a patient anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 hours out of their day at the of an office just to go see. And we've all heard of telehealth companies, and we're kind of getting used to them because of the pandemic. But what a lot of people don't understand is that your PHI, your public health or your patient health information is it's pretty detailed, and it has a lot of security risks that come along with it. In order to protect it, some of those video companies weren't able to protect it because they weren't holding their information behind a firewall situation. And so Cinti Blick at the time was smart. They created these pathways through what they call FHIR, which is Fast Health Interoperable Resources, which was a government standard server that all healthcare companies had to uniform to because of the CARES Act, and put everyone on the level playing field. But now what's not level is the development of the systems where they have to be behind the firewall in order to really stay standard with those laws and that attestation. So longer story short, I continued to help individuals on the oil and gas side through today. And I worked with Modern Health IT, growing that platform and getting it really set up in order for transition into growth and innovation. And the developers are in a growth phase where they're making sure that the tech stack is pulling in everything correctly. They're beta testing with, I would say, over 50 providers, which has hundreds of patients on a day, doing video calls with doctors in a secure platform, which is great. And then so that allowed me to free up more of my time to get back into oil and gas mergers and acquisitions as things started coming back after the pandemic the last couple of years. So I started with a company called Western Land Services over the last 6 months, and it's been a breath of fresh air. They're an employee-owned 50-year company owned in Western Michigan. I actually have not even been to the home office, which is crazy because I'm down here in Oklahoma, because they're a nationwide company. They have offices in Midland, Oklahoma City, Western Michigan, Pennsylvania, and they have 1,400 digital independent contractors that work for them, but they also have 400 employees that they've kept busy across the different facets of the oil and gas market, and also into where they've diversified themselves into the renewable space, and they're trying to transition the individuals and the services into right away. They've just hired a new right away director, but their right away services have been moving beyond. So there's multiple different facets, as oil and gas kind of fluctuates every 3 to 4 years based on geopolitical situations, and they've really positioned themselves well, which has been truly refreshing to work for a company and to be able to help lead by example in that regard as well. So,
Jordan, that is a fantastic history. You have been a busy man since you were born, it sounds like. In a land where it feels like the average American doesn't even want one job. I know that you said that your mom was a really good example of hard work and just getting things done, providing for people and making sure things. What is it that you do to keep yourself from getting burned out from doing so much for so long?
Being able to transition from smaller projects to larger projects is a good way to not be burned out, but you can get burnout from transfer. But the best thing is making sure that my work life, my personal life are separate. I have complete boundary lines. My wife and I, we don't have kids, which is probably why I have a little more energy sometimes than I should. But we do have 2 Great Danes that we walk all the time, or we'll go and we'll take them out and see. But it's really keeping those boundary lines between your personal life and your work life. And we do have offset schedules, so it allows me to kind of work while she's working at night, and then she only works 3 days a week, but you really have to set your schedule, know what you need to get done during that set schedule. And if you're accomplishing it and you're marking off the checklist of everything that you have to get done, it really creates that realm to push to the next checklist, to the next portion, and then taking many vacations in between. So really helps in that regard as well.
Work-life balance is a hot topic that everybody's talking about this day and age, right? And we have the people who are on the one side who don't want to do enough, and then you have the other people who are trying to do everything and keep it all straight. It sounds like you tend to lean a little bit more towards doing it all and trying to keep it all straight. What intentional actions do you set to keep those your work life and your personal life straight, just to make sure that you make time for your wife and for your dogs and for yourself instead of just working for somebody else all day?
You know, the biggest thing is blocking off time. And, work-life balance is all about when you're there, be present in the present, be where you need to be. I will get emails, things like that throughout, but I actually leave my phone on do not disturb almost 90% of the day. I know to check it when I set timers on my work computer, and I'll set timers on my phone in order to check certain things. But that actually has to do. I'm obviously a functioning ADHD person. That's kind of, it keeps me going because on my personality. But setting those boundaries, setting those timers, making sure that you're staying present, that's the best way to make sure that you have the ability to do what you want to do in those set parameters. And if you don't get it done, set another timer, but just get started.
Yeah, I really like what you said there about being present, because if you're not present in what you're doing, then are you really doing your best at what you're doing, right? You have to be intentional with your focus. You have to be intentional with your efforts. And if I'm at home with my wife, but I'm thinking about work, she knows I'm not there and she gets upset. If I'm at work and I'm just thinking about my wife at home, work is suffering, right? And I'm not providing the value that I should to my work. I'm not going to get the results that I want over there. So I really like the way you talked about that. Well, it sounds like things are going pretty well for you with all of your ADHD and the myriad of projects that you're working on these days. A lot of people are looking towards the future and how they can create passive income. They're looking for a way to either enhance or replace their current income. What are your thoughts about this?
I think it's a necessity, to be honest. Inflation rates over the last 20 years have skyrocketed. I think that the value of the dollar has almost doubled. The way that I see this across the country is, you can buy a bottle of Coke in Oklahoma. You can buy a bottle of Coke, and I'm talking Coca-Cola. So you keep and then you can buy one in Europe. You can buy one across the world, and you can see how that dollar fluctuates per the political range. It used to be buy a loaf of bread. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So in the 40s, they would say you could buy a bread and milk somewhere, and it would be, you could see the different change and the change of how the dollar is spent and what it's spent for. And then so creating passive income is going to be monumental in regards. It's how do you invest your money? Who do you invest with? Who do you trust in that regard? And to be honest, there's so many scams out there that say, hey, get it, the quicker that you think you're going to get rich, the worse off that the odds are that you're going to lose your money in that position. So slow and steady wins the race. Solid investing today, micro investing today will leaps and bounds create wealth, generational wealth, versus trying to win it all that day. And then the biggest portion is find something you're passionate about and support it. Try and find a way to break in that market. If you're passionate about garage sales, you have Gary V that goes through and he'll buy small things and sell them on the internet. You have, if you're passionate about art, there's ways to create art at home, sell it online, things of that nature. If you're looking for investment opportunities, there's a bunch of franchise availability that's out there. I get hit up almost daily on LinkedIn, finding the right avenues, finding the right platforms to be able to invest in, and finding the passion that you have in order to research it as well.
When you're looking at a passive investing opportunity, what are some of the things that you look at to vet those, to see that? What are some of the red flags that you're looking for that says this is a scam, and what's green flags?
Absolutely. Some of the red flags that I have would be it's easy. It's easy to do. It may be easy. Somebody that's trying to teach you the ways, they're not going to give you every tidbit that you need. So if the biggest way to vet something is to research what they've done versus what you're seeing in the market. We have large amounts of ability to go out and vet companies by modeling one internet portion versus another. You also have people that will comment in the basis, or even just picking the old fashioned ways, pick up the phone and call them, and if something sounds off, trust yourself. That's the biggest portion. If it's too easy, it's not going to be true. So in that regard,
that's some very sound advice. Well, as we're wrapping up the interview, what exciting initiatives or plans do you have in the works over the next 6 to 12 months?
So in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm letting the Modern Health IT kind of go on its own, on its venture. I've kind of helped set that up, so I'm excited to see where that growth comes from. But in the meantime, oil and gas is kind of they're in a downturn. The mergers and acquisitions is always happening whenever there is a downturn. Obviously, buy low, sell high type situation. So oil and gas investing in the next year is going to be huge, with a lot of the private equity companies reallocating funds. Large oil and gas funds are they're collecting investors, new teams. They're kind of putting those together. So we've stayed very busy in that regard over the last 3 to 6 months. One of the reasons why I was brought in to help manage some of the projects that they have is they are acquisition projects, where they know that infrastructure is going to build out. But the biggest thing that I have is I'm working on kind of my social presence, and one of the reasons why I was excited to hear how I received the interview invite from you guys. And I look back, to be honest, I had not heard of your podcast, but I've become a very big fan since learning about it, since kind of getting an invitation and the reach out. So it's been a testament. But I also started writing a little bit of stories about some of the merger and acquisition horror stories, some of the success stories, and some of the other stuff. So I'm going to start putting those on my LinkedIn and creating a blog that matches some of those. So maybe we can intertwine some of those stories together.
Nice. That sounds like a pretty cool project that you're working on. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fun to hear your story and to share some of these tips and insights that you have. If people would like to connect with you, what should they do?
My LinkedIn is available. It's my first name is Jordan, Jordan, and my last name is Lytle. It sounds like it looks like little, but it sounds like title, and so it's spelled Lytle. You can message me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have an open door policy there. Anything you need or anyone I can connect you to, I will. Even if it's the smallest of tasks, or if it's something that I don't know. My biggest thing, or you can call me at 918-625-7838 is my cell phone number, or you can connect with westernls.com is the website for Western Land Services. You can connect connect through there. And or if you would like, my company consulting email for oil and gas mergers and acquisitions is Trafford, TRAFFORD, exploration@gmail.com. So,
well, there you have it, folks. If you'd like to get up with Jordan, choose one of those methods and reach out. He would be more than happy to talk to you and share what he is doing further. This is the end of our Success in Motion podcast episode, and we're excited to have Jordan here. Thank you again for your time, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.